But let me go on to Glif, because that's the tech that I wanted to talk about today. Glif is an agentic platform for producing video. Now, there's other agentic platforms. This one is particularly tuned to produce images and video. And I first ran into Glif about a year ago, and I thought it was cool. I thought what they were doing was interesting. At the time, they hadn't introduced their agentic capability, and also at a time a year ago, the agents probably wouldn't have been able to do a good job with video. But what they did have was interesting workflows, which we'll see, to produce video. And in its most basic form, it's producing an alternative way to access the tools, the video and image tools, and do processing with that. And you'll see the sort of things that it can do. But in its most complex form, it's able to produce complex projects and such, and do research and really follow the procedure which I was just showing in various incarnations. It's fairly no code. Well, it is no code. There's no coding going on, but you can define workflows, which is one of the distinguishing things about the platform. So it, like many consolidators, has access to a whole bunch of different modules and API access to GPTs, all the major GPT platforms, your major image generators, both commercial and open source, your major video generators, and as well as audio and voice. I don't know if it goes directly to Suno, but it does use 11 Labs, which can do some of the same things. So, oh yeah, it does have Suno right there. As well as text-to-speech. So it has these things as tools which it can use. And the clever thing is that now that agents have reached this point, they can harness these tools in a sequence to actually execute what I showed before and in more complicated form to actually put something together. So Glif itself specializes in the image and video and audio. It has these as reasonable modular components that it can call instead of other agentic systems which can do anything but don't necessarily have these particular tooling and workflows to work with video. And one of the really interesting things about this, if any, how many people here have used Comfy UI? So Comfy UI, I'm not going to get into it. We did talk about it long ago. Comfy UI is generally associated with open source systems because there's a lot of open source things that do not have their own commercial environment, like VO or Sora or Kling or any of those things, Midjourney, whatever. But they need an environment to run in. And Comfy provides without going into any details here, Comfy provides a really powerful way of writing image and video workflows and even LLMs sometimes, which means that as a modular component within Glif, we not only have access to the APIs for all those systems you just saw, but we can write arbitrary processes within Comfy UI and execute all sorts of more complex processing. And Comfy UI is used both for open source and also before a year ago when you first started to have really powerful and more realistic video generators at the commercial level, you had open source video generators and such, and your more professional productions would actually use Comfy UI simply because it gives much more granular access and ability to manipulate things than any of the commercial tools did at the time. And still does, it's just that you don't need that level of detail for much of the processing and video generation that's done these days. But it's a very powerful system to have as a modular component available to the agent to execute. And that is definitely a distinguishing factor for Glif. Interestingly, Glif does a lot of the process that has a thing called short-form video agent, which we'll look at in 2 seconds, which can take that and execute the script that we saw before as your standard way of putting together videos. Now, it doesn't have the subtlety or the ability to get into gross, really granular details and transitions and figure out things, but it does have an interesting subset of that, and that's more a limitation as the technology progresses. More a limitation of, again, what the LLM can actually think about and how complicated it can get. As these things, in the next revision, we may be able to get, I'll show you what I mean when I get to the examples. It will be able to get deeper into, producing a professional level video as opposed to, a short thing that is what it does now. So let's actually go over to one of those. So Glif. Now I'm using Glif because I think it's one of the best examples of how you can start using this sort of agentic video to put stuff out. The platform itself, honestly, I don't think it's going to survive because I have been, looking at it. It's not. They continue to make improvements and leveraging the improvements in LLMs. I don't think they have enough money or enough of a team to actually succeed, though, I could be wrong. I just think that their temporary advantage can be easily replicated, and they haven't established enough of a user base to really succeed at this point. But what you can see is that it has an awful lot of interesting stuff. Its major things are agents and workflows that call models. So let's start at the workflow level because that's really their oldest thing. And their workflows vary from, let's see a good one here. As I said, there's a lot of similarities between this and any number of the consolidators like FreePick, for instance, or Kriya, or OpenArt. There's a whole bunch of them at this point that can call a whole bunch of different models. So it has access to 174 plus models that it can call of those various types that we saw before. Image, video, audio, LLMs, general stuff that you might have to do housekeeping as well. So the workflow. Sorry. You have to buy credits. That's another thing about Glif is instead of having to worry about paying for a bunch of different systems, you buy Glif credits and it figures out how much everything costs. Because of course using VO is much more expensive than say using Seedream Lite, but you'll get a better product out of it. So you have your choice for what to do during development and you can bring it to a higher quality if you want to spend more money. It's not necessarily the most effective way to spend your money, but its credits tend to be fairly expensive. Not as cheap as FreePick, but on the other hand, not as expensive as FAL or something like that. So, it comes in greater or lesser for certain of the use cases. In its most basic use cases, we can have something like create an image with NanoBanana. And this would give us a prompt. I don't have any style references, so I'm not going to use any here. This is not complicated, of course. No, it can't be empty. I don't have an image URL. All right, I'm not going to use this one. Let's use basic NanoBanana Pro. Now, there's nothing profound about what it's doing here. It's just the fact that it's consolidated this into a different type of workflow, which is perhaps more suited for people who want to be able to, as we'll see in the agents, talk to the thing instead of using a GUI. And there's certain advantages to that. So here we are with chicken. But this particular workflow is not that complicated because all it's doing is taking your prompt and supplying it to the model, and we get our giant chicken. But they can get much more complicated than that. Let's find a good one. So here's a Wojak meme generator, if you're familiar with that. The Wojak is the type of drawing here, and it comes up with different phrases to produce this certain type of chart. You could consider this to be slop, or you could consider this, if it's well done, to be an interesting meme that comes out. Give me an idea, arbitrary idea.
Judging if something is slop.
So here, what we'll look at the code in a second. We have more things going on than we did in the last one. In this one, here we go. some good examples of slop and a little sort of orcish golem there. What is he, a goblin? Yeah, your various methods of slop and such. And we can create 1 million of those, and maybe we'll get some clicks. I don't know if this gets clicks. Maybe it did at one time.
How many credits did this generation take? Because there's an estimate.
Yeah, so it didn't take many credits. I don't know. Well, we'll see in a second what it's actually using. It's using Kimi, which is an LLM model for its thinking. Well, let's look at this, because another interesting part of Glif is that it's a very social system. That is, if you publish a workflow, and you don't have to publish a workflow, but most of them are published, you can view it, you can see what the person did, and you can remix it, take it, and derive your own from it. So 218, there are 218 remixes of this workflow, which means that we're basically copying it and using it. So first, let's view the source. And this is the workflow process. Now, this is a no-code system. Last time we covered N8N and various node flow systems. That can do similar things. This is a more straightforward block sequence, but it's equivalent to some of those things. So you have various things like your input. So it figures out how to do the screens here. Then it takes your input and it has to know a little bit about variables. So you have a block that defines the variable here, input, and Glif knows that it has to get an input there, and also tells you how many credits it's likely to take. Now it calls Kimi to actually generate the meme. So if you can see it, you are simulating the most unhinged Wojak meme creator that is specialized in the form of depicting a character. Can I actually extend this here? Yeah. And we give it a bunch of instructions that the LLM can now understand, right? And we want JSON out there so that we can use it in the next step. And so we take an input and it generates all those phrases that we saw, knowing that it's going to put this into this context. Now it just creates it to JSON. Well, it actually maps it to JSON. This just has to be done in order to decode the JSON coming from last step. I know JSON is a technical term. Hopefully some of you are familiar with it. It's a particular way, it's a human readable way of representing data, basically. It's easier to read than the old XML stuff. And then it calls another generator, the Wojak generator, which actually makes the drawing. It takes all these inputs here and creates the Wojak generator. So it's leveraging something else. And then it has a different interface for actually putting together the end product, which is this taking all those responses and letting you lay it out so that you can see what it looks like. So it has all these components which are commonly useful for creating images and video. Basically giving you a tool set that you can use like that, which, it's not that you can't do this in other systems. It's just that it has it built in because that's its audience.
Do you know what would prompt it to use Kimi K2 Turbo over a different model for image generation?
Kimi is cheap and it's good at certain. It's not a bad model for the cost. I think that's why they used it. You have your choice of models, especially for something trivial like this. And Kimi is a fairly strong LLM model. I think it's open source Chinese. I forget if it's commercial or open source. Yeah. And people do use Kimi. I mean, obviously it's not the top end model, but it does have a very good reputation actually.
When you put in prompts, is there a way to opt for a certain model over a different open source model? Yeah,
I can change that easily, because it knows this particular block can call any LLM.
Okay, cool.
So everything that it's programmed with. So if I want to spend more money, I could use OpenAI or Veo or DeepSeek. I could probably save money with Qwen. The quality of the output will differ. But this flexibility is part of the system here. And let's actually remix it. So I can take this now and I can actually work with it and create my own. So I can now change the name. And use it and republish it. So I can take this workflow and, the old one. Now let's say I wanted to do one with a different, and use Mistral for some reason. There may be other things. I may have to watch the parameters there to make sure it matches, but generally they're very similar for LLMs. And it'll execute that. I don't know if it does the estimate here. Yeah, it did regenerate the estimate. So that's how we can tell how much is actually doing. So if we use OpenAI, it's going to cost a lot more. And there may be a particular quirk of Kimi that makes it particularly good at making Wojak memes. I don't know. I don't think so, but it could be. And you have a whole bunch of blocks that you can use here. So text, these are all user interface blocks. You can input text, multi-pics, images, audio, and video. AI generators, again, LLM to generate text, the actual generator for images. Again, the Comfy UI block, even though few of you have used Comfy UI, that's very powerful for a system to have. I don't know anyone else who's integrating Comfy UI at this level without having to do your own API work, because Comfy UI will support an API, but you'd have to do that yourself. And your most common blocks of things to do, as well as various tools that are useful. Various tools for rendering the output, and other things like changing the behavior of the bot itself. And this can be combined into a fairly complex workflow. Wojak being a trivial example. I think I had a better one. But you see the level at this. Anything that you can do with those sort of workflow steps that you can describe in that way, you can create a workflow for. Let's see. So a lot of these are very basic, but here's like Charlie and Lola, which is a particular trend, which wants an image, which I'm not going to give it right now. But, this one actually draws a little, this one actually takes a photo, creates a little, a little cartoon image of it, and then puts it on the image. So it's got those workflow steps, not very complicated, but the ability to take that, generate the image, and then place it on the other one through these workflow steps. So it can manipulate the images and the videos at a low level, including video overlays and things like that, because it knows how to do that through these workflows. I'm going to move on to agents unless anyone has any questions about workflows.
Are we gonna see an example of video generation?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're getting there. And workflows can generate videos, but it'll be more interesting to see. So these things here. Here is a Kling Pro AI video generation workflow. No different than if you went in through FreePick and just gave it a prompt. We can give it an image input. We could also have, there's another one that does first frame, last frame. So it has all those capabilities because it supports the models through the API and then through this workflow UI here, through the blocks, and can create these workflows. So that in itself is pretty powerful, and a lot of people use that. Now, I might not use this because I might do it myself, and I want to handle it myself. On the other hand, I might want to do this to automate a workflow if I want to pump out 1 million of them. Glif also lets you call itself via an API or even via an MCP server. So if you expose your workflow as an MCP callable thing, then any LLM that supports MCPs or APIs can then use your workflow. So you can integrate it, and the agent, at that point, the LLM acting as an agent will be able to call your workflow and figure out when it wants to call your workflow and do your custom workflow that way. So that in itself is fairly powerful. But what makes it agentic, let's just look at one. What makes it agentic is the ability, like I showed before, to actually take a prompt and then use those workflows as the actual tools that the LLM has access to. So that's something you don't have in any other system as easy to use as this, the ability to create your tools using this workflow. And the tools are fundamental to any agent. An agent needs to know about the tools that it can use. And these workflows now become the tools that you can use in the video and image space. So that's a powerful feature that you don't get anywhere else without a lot more work. So another very strong agentic system, which has gotten a lot of press recently and come to the fore, is Claude Code. And there's nothing that we're doing here that Claude Code can't do, except Claude Code, even with skills, doesn't make it easy for you to do these image and video workflows. Not that you can't do it with skills and tools and such, it's that you have to put a lot of work into it, and maybe you're looking to be an artist, not do LLM configurations. So it's solving the problem a different way. This one is always cool, miniature history. And this is actually the Teutoburg forest example. So this is actually an agent, and I will show you the prompt in a minute so you can see how this is actually constructed and why this is a Agentic video. But now we're talking to an LLM where it actually implements using Sonnet. So Sonnet is pretty powerful, not as much as Opus, but Sonnet is still very, very powerful LLM that is very good at using tools. And what you find, most of the frontier LLMs at this point are pretty good at using tools. There are actually both open source and lesser LLMs that are just dedicated to using tools, because the question is, do you need an LLM that has all the knowledge of the world and has been trained on using tools? Or can you use a lesser LLM, which will be cheaper and faster, which specializes in tool using, doesn't have all the knowledge of the world? Of course, that LLM won't be as good as doing scripts without the knowledge of the world to fill in all the information in the scripts, but it'll be perfectly good at calling tools. So it may not be able, or it might be able to look up the history of the Teutoburg Forest Massacre and figure things out. And you see this cute little tilt lab things, which a lot of these example agents put together. But let's pick a topic. What's a good historical topic?
How the steam engine was invented.
We've looked at, in the past year, two other major ways of agentic style, agent style, or ways of automated coding, that is. So we looked at vibe coding a while ago, and the example I usually have used in the past is how to create your own news channel. You research the news, you pick your topics, you write the script, you pass the script to an avatar, the avatar speaks. We did that using vibe coding. Vibe coding is actually real coding. It's just that you're not doing the coding. It's actually writing the code for you, and you compile the code, or however you want, however it's distributed, and then that code does what, hopefully, often, sometimes, does what you actually vibe coded, what you describe to the vibe coding system. So that's one way of doing that. It's probably more efficient than what we're going to look at, because if you're using the LM for everything, including interpreting what you're trying to do, that gets expensive. So I don't want to burn down a forest in order to create this thing. Real code is going to be more efficient there. Then, last time or the time before, we looked at nodal flow systems, like N8N is the premier form of that right now. OpenAI has their builder available now that came out recently. There's Opal from Google, and there's a couple of those things where you actually, I'm not going to go into it here, but you actually draw out the process using nodes connected together. And there, again, you have the same thing. You do your research, you make your script, you animate your script, and here you're calling for deep research. You're calling a script writer based upon your deep research after you've chosen your topics, and then you're calling an avatar generator to actually do the video, and then you stitch it together with the audio and produce your final product, and that's represented on the screen. Here it's going to be represented just by a prompt. So that's fully agentic, and it's doing everything leveraging the prompt. So you're really thinking not about what's going on at all. You're just telling the agent how to do it. So that's real agentic coding, as opposed to vibe coding or nodal flow coding, which is usually call it.
So to make videos, let's say, or photos more realistic, how can we do it? By just using prompts, or because it's picking the tool, right?
Yes. Let me show you the details, and you'll see a little bit more. I'm not saying the potential is there. Let's see what we get to here. There's a lot of potential here that's just beginning to be realized, because once you get to agentic programming, depending upon the power, again, getting back to the LLM, being able to understand the problem, create a sequence that's actually going to solve the problem, and execute that sequence. That's something that, that's agentic. That's something that was not easy to do a year ago. But now in 2026, we have much stronger tools to do that. So this has, on its own, well, on its own. Someone wrote the prompt, of course. It's come up with a video plan. It's broken it up into scenes based upon its research. It's come up with voiceovers and actually described the way we usually do it is to create an image and then animate that image. So we need both of those prompts to do it. And we're just going to take what it has. I'm going to say, if I wanted to, I could say, because I'm talking to an LLM that understands, to a great extent, the context that it's talking about, I can give it this verbal instruction. Let's see what it does. I want to add some bling to the steam engine.
Absolutely.
All right, that's all the tweaks we'll do. So all the things that it's doing now, again, getting back to the way to create video, again, at a basic level, if we were doing this professionally, we would really craft this. We would get the timing exactly right. We would go into the script details. We'd make sure we're telling the story that we want to tell. But this is going to do a half decent job with these tilt script stuff. You can see the Seedream is not the Seedream Lite is not the best image or video generator, but it does have the advantage of being cheap. So the quality can be much better if we were willing to spend a lot more money. But this is a free thing, so I'm watching my credits here. And it generated that, and now it wants me to pick a voice. Let's find the Attenborough voice.
Hello world. This is a professional narration sample.
These are 11 Labs voices.
Hello world. This is a professional narration sample.
Hello world. This is a professional narration sample.
I'm going to use her for once. That's actually the 11 Labs ID. I think I can close this now. And now it's doing the voiceovers based upon the script that it generated before. Now it's actually doing something clever, right? It's checking the duration of the voice clips, which has to be done in the manual process to make sure that they're going to fit the video. And that's part of the agent understands how to do that. So it's analyzed and has access to the full FFmpeg library, as well as other libraries that may be available. FFmpeg, for those who are unfamiliar, is a very old but very useful audio-video library that's able to detect silences, figure out things, audio and visually, cut things, join things together. A lot of really useful tooling, which this has built into it as something that specializes in video and audio processing. So the voiceovers are ready. I can listen to them if I want and tell them to redo them. And it actually found two that were over 10 seconds, so it's going to fix that. Now it's going to take the images, go through the rest of the process.
I like how it parallelizes some of this work.
Yeah.
Did you specify that it should be 10 seconds? I didn't see.
Yeah, this particular agent is locked to that. So a more professional level implementation would not be locked to that. But otherwise you have, if you're using variable lengths, you introduce a whole bunch of complexity here, which would have to be solved within the LLM, and they just haven't done that because they only came out with this like 3 months ago. So,
Also, they're using a video model. It's probably has a limit on the number of seconds it generates.
yeah, yeah. Some models won't even let you specify how many seconds that it should be. The open source ones generally can. How many frames it's going to be.
So this will be about 40 seconds.
Yeah.
But it's not expensive. I think one credit is about 1 cent.
I don't know, but it's not expensive. I think this takes less than 40 cents. Again, it's not necessarily the most efficient way to spend your money, but it has a lot of power behind it. And as the agents develop, or you develop your own agents, and we'll look at the agent code in a second, You can modify this and make it more complicated because you have all these workflow tools that you can call, which have a lot of power from the audio video world to do things. So whatever the agent can figure out to do with the tools that are available, and you can create your own workflows that increase that power, now you have a system you can do something with. What's the upper limit? Not clear yet. Not clear how well Sonnet will be able to call these workflows. Again, they just introduced this recently. And there are people have custom systems that do all this, using custom code, but that's not what we have here. Here we have something for the general end user. There are professional systems that will do the news broadcasting task and have a number of chained agents to make it come out well, and add all sorts of flair or add a political bias, anything like that. That's not what we're doing here. So adding the background music, stitch the clips together, and even adding subtitles.
How did they choose the background music?
I believe it just, we'll see that. Actually, can we see that? It calls either Suno or 11 Labs. Let's see what it
But
did.
just based on the subject matter, it says this would be good background music?
Yes.
I think it generated a couple of blocks above.
Yeah, you're right.
The volume here. Yeah, and I was just curious about the actual genre,
Historical. Here it is. The music's from 11 Labs. So not Suno, but 11 Labs has its own music generator as well. Not as complex as Suno.
Yeah. Right. Period appropriate. There it is.
Yeah, where is the video?
Maybe ask it.
Maybe if you look at the add subtitles to video, that's the final video.
Well, usually it just shows me the video, so I'm a little surprised here. It comes in the stream. I'll skip that and just show you one that's already made if this is having a bug right now.
Can you scroll up a little bit? There's a download button.
Where?
I thought for a second I saw a download button.
What if you prompt and say, show me the video? What is it?
I'll try that.
What about open artifact?
I try.
Oh yeah.
It says open artifact. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, well, that's getting that. I'm not sure why it's getting that. Still a few bugs in the system. All right, here it is.
Gaslit.
In 1712, English mines faced a deadly problem. Deep shafts flooded constantly, drowning miners and halting coal supply. Ironmonger Thomas Newcomen built the first practical steam engine, a massive atmospheric pump that used condensing steam to create vacuum power. 50 years later, Scottish engineer James Watt spotted the fatal flaw. Repeatedly heating and cooling wasted enormous coal. Watt's separate condenser slashed fuel
Here's my
costs
bling.
and transformed steam power into the beating heart of the Industrial Revolution across Britain.
So, not bad. Again, Seadream Lite does not have the best output, but it is cheap. Just, in your head, see it a little nicer if I'd used VO and spent all my money on that. Simple example. Let's take a look at at a similar prompt. Unlike workflows, Agentic prompts are not public, but the short form video story is a template that they provide. I'm glad it answered that question correctly. That's they've gotten a lot smarter. All right, agents. So there's a whole bunch of agents that do various things because of course we can do a lot more than the workflows do. So for the agents, it's got a number of templates to start with and to build. And one of the more popular ones is exactly what we did that for, which is a short form video agent. It says your character, but what do we want here?
So who actually generated that miniature? Is
Well, this particular workflow that we're looking at now is a template that they provided, and a lot of the examples that are in the agent section, I think they have a free version that you can look at. I forget. Are modifications of that template. So the short form history thing that we saw with the tilt, this actually also uses tilt video, but that's a minor modification specifically for historical topics, whereas this one's asking about a character. But I could have put a historical topic in there as well. This is the personality that's defined based upon my input that I wanted a Lich King, I forget. And the purpose of this agent is to create immersive dark fantasy videos, exploring the Lich King's lore, undead armies, and necromantic power through cinematic storytelling. And let's go into it, and then I'll show you the source. Now, I'm not going to run this because it's going to be very similar to the one that we just saw. And I think I've already generated one if you really want to see it. But this is where it starts. Same sort of process. Shows it what it's going to do. But let's edit the agent. Can I get that bigger at all? I don't think so. Okay, so the parts of the agent, fairly simple. This is the LLM, which is being fed to Claude Sonnet, which is a powerful LLM. And also, this part of it is free, which is why I think they're going to run out of money sooner or later. This is the actual prompt. You create a dark fantasy video, and this is why it's agentic, about the Lich King and undead lore using the following process of tool chaining. User gives you the idea request, you research it, you come up with a plan, and you need to condense the story into image prompts and instructions for how to build the image prompts. So here's the magic in that the LLM knows how to, understand these things, and you're giving it these contextual directives to head off all the usual issues you might have with this sort of generation. So if I just said generate some images, it's not going to come out very well. But as I'm specifying all this within the agent, including guidelines, like there's no transfer from image prompt to image prompt. If you've ever tried to write an image prompt based upon a script, the LLM doesn't realize that you need to fully define each image prompt, so it'll start talking about, use a pronoun, instead of re-describing the character that it's trying to do. That's to prevent this. So telling it needs a voiceover script. And you can see this is just LLM interpreting this English prompt. Present the plan to the user, approve this, go through this whole process. So we're not coding, we're not drawing a flow or anything like that. We're just describing the sequence of steps that you're going to do. And this, especially if you look at what people are doing with Claude Code, which also uses Sonnet or Opal, is how these things are defined. How these powerful systems, not just for video, but for sales and marketing and finance, and pretty much people are using it all over the place, including high-level script design. Using this level of instructions that is understood now, it can figure out how to call these tools, as we saw, and effectively make me a story about the Lich King or a historical one. Now, what comes with a template? This is the template, and these are the workflows that it calls. So it has 174 different workflows that I can use, including the ones that are built in or the ones that you design. So it knows how to do a web search, it knows how to search Wikipedia, and the agent, the LLM, knows when to call these different tools, and you saw it calling these different tools, and how to figure these things out, which you couldn't do a year ago effectively. So the particular workflows that it uses are the ones that are enabled, and that's, I don't know why Kling is actually enabled here because we're not using Kling, but you can see we could switch to Kling and get much better output. We're using text-to-speech, generate music, find a voice ID, create video from images, which is generic, but is calling CDream in the end. Display buttons. It didn't actually display any buttons, but some of the other versions do. Make the tilt shift miniatures, mix things together, determine the length, do your search. I don't know why it needs the current time, but maybe it does. There's some extra things in here because we're not using Nano Banana or all of those things. And like I said, FFmpeg lets us do editing. And the Agentic code knows how to use all of these tools rationally to solve the problem. Now, if we go back, and it's got other things like memory and being able to describe the theme here and how to actually find the agent within the system. So we can take this basic prompt and we can stretch it. We can see how far we can do. Can we do a 50-second video? If we say do a 50-second video, then yeah. Will it be coherent? Maybe. It'll probably be at the same level since all these things are fairly independent. It'll be a longer script, so you may be stretching it, but these are things you have to experiment with if you wanted to dive into the tool, or really any LLM tool that's trying to do this and leverage tools. There's nothing here, like I said, that you can't do with Claude Code, but you would have to define all your workflows and your skills that would actually implement these things, and it wouldn't be as easy as just calling the workflows here. Nor would it be presented in the, this is a coherent package for doing this sort of thing. You could develop your own Claude Code that would be very similar, since everything is being done with the LLM. I won't get into memory, but you can define your memory that you want to use for a more complex agentic experience. You can add conversation starters. There's lots of little bells and whistles, which I won't get into, which makes this a interesting, usable system. I had one that I wanted to finish.
Just curious, can you do reverse engineering? Upload a video, let's say 1 minute, generate all the steps?
Yes, you could. In fact, because Gemini and I believe Opus and possibly Sonnet can watch a video, there is a workflow in here that will call those things and watch a video. So you can upload a video, it can watch the video, it'll return a description of the video, and then you can take that. You would have to write a different agent, take the script that came back from the video, and then re-script it and re-implement it. So you would just have to describe it agentically in the LLM to reproduce that video, and you can do that a lot. In fact, there is a workflow or an agent that will let you reverse engineer TikTok videos. Let me see if I can find that. I haven't used it.
I think there's like a Chrome extension that you can actually use for Glif.
Yeah, there is.
You can take like an image or a video and then remix it essentially.
Yep. Where's my stuff?
I think that you expect for Claude Code to cannibalize these kinds of services.
Well, as Claude Code continues to develop and people are, really jumping in there.
It's just way simpler.
Yeah, it is. And, the CLI interface is actually very powerful, this sort of chaining that you want to do for complicated problems. There's a reason why Claude Code is, and it doesn't even have to use Claude. Any LLM will do, but the harness is dedicated to Claude, since it's from Anthropic. There are clones as well. I expect that someone will leverage Claude Code to do the same thing. And like I said, this company is underfunded and has a small staff and is already not keeping up to date. So unless this explanatory video, thanks for coming, leads to tremendous sales for Glif, I doubt that they'll survive 2026. But it's not. They've been around for a while. I don't know how much of their 16 million raise they've actually spent. Really, they put out a weekly or monthly video show, but it's mostly about the new video technologies that's come out, and not really about Glif, because all the little components that you saw before that we can call videos from, you can do that in any number of tools. So it's the agentic stuff and the ability to easily create these workflow sequences that can then be called by the agent that makes it particularly powerful, but there's nothing there that you couldn't re-implement within Claude code. It's just that they've done it already, and if they manage to get a user base to support them, they can survive. But I don't see that happening because I see very little. I looked at it a year ago, I looked at it now, I see very little user references on Reddit and on X that this is actually being widely used. It does have enough usage it does have some users, but I'm not convinced that it has enough to survive. And if you're the type of person who's creating this sort of workflow, you might already be in the Claude Code headspace. You might not be looking for a tool like this to help you. But it's there. It's a really good example of what you can do with Agentic Video because it's all there. And there's a whole bunch of different agents that you can see and look at through Glif.